Hola amigos, soy Juani, espero que estés bien. Actualmente estoy en mi lugar favorito, su favorito en Australia, se llama Sunshine Coast. Si vas a Australia en el futuro, te recomiendo sin duda porque es muy bonito, hay muchas playas, actividades divertidas y en general hay una buena onda aquí. En fin, all right, so the other day, I just wanted to run something by you guys real quick. I did a class with one of my other teachers in italki, so shout out to Antonio if you're watching. But yeah, I basically asked him, when it comes to the past tense, what's one of the most common mistakes that you see with students? And he actually mentioned something pretty surprising to me, which was using the verb said in the preterite past tense. And I can kind of see why that gets confusing. Now, obviously, we've been through the preterite tense before. Now, remember, the cool thing about the verb said and ed in the preterite tense is it has exactly the same conjugations. So Antonio did mention that a lot of people get mixed up when they're using the yaw form with said. So remember, since it has the same conjugations, it's going to have two different meanings, which can be confusing. So the meanings would be, remember, in the yaw form, I was, so fui, I was, or I went. So most people do get using I went or ed in the preterite tense quite easily. So some examples, ayer fui a la biblioteca. So ayer fui a la biblioteca, or anoche fui al restaurante. So anoche fui al restaurante. Or el sábado fui a nadar al mar. So el sábado fui a nadar al mar. All right, so those are some pretty easy examples that most people can kind of pick up straight away and without too much difficulty. But as he mentioned, using the verb said in the preterite tense can sometimes be a little bit confusing. And most people tend to just use the imperfect past tense, which, if you know, the yaw form is yo era. So yo era. So most people tend to use that, and I know I've done that as well in the past, but what you can actually do, so in a lot of cases you can actually use the imperfect. You can use, say, yo era or yo fui, and it means basically exactly the same thing. There's no mistake. But there are definitely some contexts or some examples where it is better to use said in the preterite tense instead of the imperfect. So I'll give you a few examples, and this is especially true when you're talking about specific time periods. So first example, en 2022 fui miembro de Toastmasters. So if you know what Toastmasters is. So en 2022 fui miembro de Toastmasters. All right, another example. Anoche fui uno de los primeros en llegar. So again, anoche fui uno de los primeros en llegar. All right, let me give you another example, and this one's especially true for me a long time ago when I was working on cruise ships. Entre 2010 y 2011 fui entrenador en el gimnasio del crucero Norwegian Jade. So, entre 2010 y 2011 fui entrenador en el gimnasio del crucero Norwegian Jade. Cool, so is that making sense now when to use said in the preterite past tense? I'll give you a couple more examples before we finish up. En 2020 fui presidente de mi clase. So, 2020 fui presidente de mi clase. All right, let me give you another one. En esta ocasión fui reconocido por mi jefe. So, en esta ocasión fui reconocido por mi jefe. All right, I hope that's making sense. Let me give you one more. De hecho, fui el vendedor del mes el mes pasado. Fui el vendedor del mes el mes pasado. Cool, so I hope that makes sense, using the verb said in the preterite tense so that you can really maximize and make the most out of that verb as well. Aparte de eso, eso es todo por hoy. Espero que tengas un buen fin de semana y nos vemos pronto.